Welcome to What I Wish I Knew at 30. Today's guest is a man who built one of Australia's most beloved food brands, not from luck, but from grit, generosity, and a fierce belief in family. Mimo Lubrano, CEO of Sandhurst Fine Foods, took a small family business and turned it into a national powerhouse by championing quality, community, and what we would call old school values in a modern world. From migrant beginnings to leading one of the country's most trusted food companies, Mimo's story is all heart and all hustle. Get ready for straight talk, humility, and wisdom from a CEO who still picks up the phone, still puts customers first, and still believes business should be built like family. Mimo, welcome to What I Wish I Knew at 30. Did I miss anything?
Thanks, Fran. You're very complimentary. Probably I thought you were talking about somebody else, but anyway, yeah, thank you very much. Very humbling. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, welcome to What I Wish I Knew at 30.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to exploring. We've both come from the food industry, and interestingly, we've both come through family businesses. And what I didn't know until we were talking earlier, that we both came from seafood processing family businesses, and that our secondary businesses were our second businesses, if you like, after those family businesses were actually both set up in 1988. So that's a beautiful synergy. And, 37 years, we're still here to tell the story. So I really love that. So Mimo, you're 30 years old again. Where are you?
Well, I'm 30 years old. It's funny you talk about those early beginnings, and we started seafood processing, and my father was always a serial business buyer and seller, just like a serial killer instead of just, buying and selling businesses. But, Dad would love to buy a business and build it up and get impatient. And he was very impatient, and, I'm impatient now, so I just realized where I get it all from. So the impatience is a big part of it. It's a virtue. So you've got to espouse it and run with it. So Dad would buy a business and build it up. Seafood processing was where he came from. Atlantic Seafood was his business. Contract packing, and somebody, I suppose, if you want to know why Sandhurst existed, because we had a very interesting experience with contract packing. So when, before that, Atlantic Seafood was battering and crumbing seafood. So we were buying in hake fillets and, prawns and things like that, and value adding them. And it's a good business because you can value add. You could buy a product for X amount per kilo and sell it for X amount per kilo, and your money is what we call pickup, or the crumb, or what's on the outside of the things,
Yeah.
So there's your value add. So there's your first concept of value add, which is a really interesting concept of how you sort of start a business. When he got into trouble with machinery, basically because he borrowed money and then they floated $1 in 88, and his debt sort of rose overnight, nearly lost the house. That's another important thing. You need to nearly lose your house. According to my mother, that's one thing that it's the defining moment of nearly losing your house is an area which you'll never forget.
No.
And she still tells that story today about how we nearly lost the house because of our loans were quite high because they were refinanced. And so recommencing in a very small way in a little factory unit in number 26 Palmer Street, Miranda, down the road from here, my father picked up a contract with a very large seafood company, which was a handshake deal to reprocess some seafood. And basically what you're doing is you're just taking seafood from one bulk pack and repacking to a small pack. And of course, being an impatient person, my father would say, well, that's only 2.5 days per week, and we need to work every day of the week and Saturday because, retailers work Saturday, but I don't. But anyway, so back then you had to work Saturday, otherwise it's sort of like this Catholic guilt thing, So you ended up working Saturdays, and so he played around with the olives. When I joined, he basically convinced me that I should join a business which was focusing on the olives, not on the seafood processing. Unbeknownst to me, we lost the contract within 6 months of the seafood. So a big defining moment in putting your faith in another person, putting your faith in contract banking, and not allowing yourself to build your own brand and your own identity. The lesson at 30 years old, I'd basically been in with Dad for about 2.5 years, and just learned firsthand how cruel this contract business could be and how it could change the nature of the business overnight with just one pen stroke, one letter that came from the supplier saying, thank you very much, you've done a great job, and we've awarded your contract to somebody else. There's nothing in writing, so we'll give you a 4-week period to do. We just invested in some machinery, or Dad invested in machinery, and I said, what are the contracts? And so, at 30 years old, I was charged with basically trying to build the olive side of the business. And yeah, I was lucky because I wasn't married, and but before that I was working at Philips Electronics as a assistant product marketing manager, and so I was faced with the dilemma of staying there for whatever time it was. And I remember
Yeah.
having what I call the corner office moment. My kids tell me that I tell this story too often, but you're in Philips Electronics and you're 26 years old, and you're watching all these guys that are in business and have been and working for themselves. I was working for Philips for many, many years. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw some guy, he was 50, he was really old. God, 50 was old. So at 26, I saw this guy in the corner office, and he was, fluttering around. And I said, Bob, you probably got a boss who's 23 or 25, and you've been here for 25 years. You probably got a corner office, and I don't want to be you. I don't want to be that. So I decided that, tender age of 26 with no commitments, I would give my father. I talked to my father, and the most important story is when my father and I had this conversation. And he said, I need someone who's going to basically run sales and marketing for me and sell these olives that I'm playing around. And I said, well, first question, of course, was, what's my pay? What are you going to pay me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was pretty, I mean, I was still pretty aggressive or pretty rude back then. My brother would never ask that question. He would never ask how much he would pay. So he was he still is very passive, He won't say much. My father said, well, listen, I can't pay you anything. I said, well, listen, I'm earning some pretty decent dollars here.
Yeah.
Why should I leave my comfy corporate job? He said, listen, there's no money at the moment, but if you do well, and we can probably, we can share the profits. I said, oh, you want an equity partner? Okay, fair enough. So we call them sweat equity partners, Fran. So at 30 years old, I'd been in there for a couple of years. I said to my father, I'll give you 12 months. I can always get another job like Philips. I'm sure that, I had a marketing degree. I was young and reckless, and I'd just been overseas. I thought here's the time to give this a crack. So I'd probably been working at Sandhurst for probably about 18 months. And luckily, my father's guidance and my father's motivation was the reason why I stuck it out, because he would tell me that you need to go on the road, and there's every single food service wholesaler in Sydney. Back then, they weren't as nice as they are now. They were actually quite rude.
Mm.
And I remember getting kicked out of most of those places and getting nearly physically thrown out of those places and coming back for more. But yeah, persistence being the number one quality that I think that anybody who's 30 should be thinking about. You got to do something, get persistent at it. If you believe in it, keep on doing it. And if you think you've got a better product than everybody else's, then you have to keep on doing it every day. But you've got to be persistent. So at 30, that's where I was, Fran. I was actually, staring down the barrel of this business. And the other thing, of course, Fran, you probably that we had at the age of 30, I had the bank ringing me every day, asking me where's the money.
Yeah.
I said, it's not under the bed, that's for sure. So they said, well, you got an overdraft and your overdraft succeeded. I said, yeah, but I've just bought a container of olives and I've just sold them to Franklin's and I'm waiting for my money. They go, we don't care about that. And they said, we're going to pretty much close you down if you don't pay within about 14 days. I actually made an executive decision to move branches. So I just bought some time. That's all I did. So I actually moved from Hurstville to Double Bay. And my theory was that Hurstville was an aging bank manager. And I thought he's going to be, wanting to be an easy way out because he's 63 or something like that. And I found a younger branch manager in Double Bay who probably had bigger fish to fry. And I thought, I want to be a small fish in this pond. And so I was a small fish in the Double Bay pond. And we bought about a month. And then, of course, chickens came home to roost. And that brand manager says, you're overdrawn and you've got no way of paying back your debts. Yeah, my mother and I were very close on this one, and my mother would because we brought her into the business, which was the first time that she'd actually been involved with us, and she previously had other jobs in fashion retail, so that was the part of the success. But my mother came in, and you can talk about women in family business. There is no other executive chairman. There is no other higher authority. There is the matriarch, the woman, she who basically commands the whole thing. She's the one that says there's only room for one woman in this family business, and that's me. So if you're going to get married, your wives are going to stay out,
Fair enough. So did Mum look after the cash flow?
Of course, that's what every woman does in a family business. And Italian women are you got the multiplier effect with Italian women. They just get very attached. And of course, computers. Mum's very savvy. My mum is 87. She's at home now. She's not very mobile, but she's on the, and we just set her up about 2 weeks ago with access to all the daily profit figures. So she gets access to all the daily turnover and daily profit figures, and she's still query some of the outstanding accounts. So she gets copies of outstanding accounts,
Fantastic.
and it's her right to ring up anybody in our accounts and saying, why hasn't this person paid? You know? So that's how you keep an 87-year-old bit of business. You give her access to all the numbers, and she can see where we're going. And I say, can you see our turnover figures? You know, I remind her, you're supposed to check the turnover figures every day, but you know, what do? You get it slack. So yeah,
That's absolutely
yeah.
fantastic.
So she'll see margin figures as well, and she'll see,
Yeah.
problems and things like that. So I think at that age, I can see some problems, but not too many problems. So yeah, yeah.
She obviously, I mean, she will definitely know the patterns, and that's cash flow is one of those really humbling experiences, because I think in business, when you've been up against the wall and,
Yeah.
the seafood industry, contract packing industry,
Yeah.
all of those, we had a similar situation back in sort of the early years of business where, we had fish quotas in the UK. And we had quotas that were literally put on at midnight, overnight, by the European government, which meant that we could no longer fish lemon soles, which was one of our main contracts for Birdseye. And from there, we then ended up literally every single day. We had bonds on the market because we bought all our fresh fish. We had employed filleters, which was almost unheard of in the UK. Most of them rock up and get paid for cash on the quay, but everything was always done properly. And that, fighting your way through something like that, I think gives you tremendous
Yeah,
resilience.
it's what we call. I mean, it's funny because and the other thing is I've been playing in rock and roll band since I was 15, and so the way I started was we used to have band practice in Dad's his factory because I couldn't be bothered hiring a studio, couldn't afford one. But I think mainly because we couldn't have any money. But the most important thing of rehearsing in Dad's factory on Sunday afternoon was to annoy the shit out of my father. And I still do it to this day. I still try to annoy the hell out of this best man. He's tormented by me, but anyway. It's okay. My kids give it to me. It's all right. So it
Yeah,
goes full
exactly.
circle. So and one of those things that we always say in the rock and roll industry is that it teaches you how to deal with a problem as it's a series of problems that are completely unresolved. I was talking to the guy that I've been with, my team I've been with for 45 years playing rock and roll guitarist and a sound guy. And we said every time we go to a show, there's variables that we don't know about, and that has definitely helped us all in our careers. So that
Yeah,
whole what you're talking about is that stuff overnight. You've got to be able to deal with stuff as it happens. There's no
yeah,
procedures manual. You just got to assess and make quick decisions.
yeah,
And it's a bit like when COVID happened, you make decisions knowing that some of them are going to be wrong, but you're using your experience, your judgment. And it's very liberating. It's actually quite satisfying to make all those decisions and sort of, and make the mistakes because that's, it's going to learn from those as well.
absolutely. And I mean, I think, COVID, I mean, for our business as well, the relationships that we've built up over the years,
It was great.
across the world were incredible. And I'm sure the same.
Yeah. Yeah. All firsthand. I mean, during COVID, one of the few probably never forget this in my whole life, carrying a letter around in my car written by myself, but I was an essential worker. So here I was, having to go to work, making sure that, we're loading cans of canned food to go to supermarkets and, some essential food service providers, that I had to be there
No,
to make
no,
sure, along with the whole of essential workers, and, as the owner of the company, I was in the trenches with them, and, people would
yeah,
come and say, okay. I said, look, I don't know, but I haven't abandoned you now, and I won't abandon you,
no,
in
that's
the
right.
future. Those people are
Yeah.
still with us. So
Well, there's
yeah,
breath in our bodies. We'll keep moving forward.
yeah, exactly. No, it's fine. So
Yeah,
it's one of the best. And I always say family business is the highs and the lows. The highs are high and the lows are low. There's peaks and troughs in family business, and if you're not cut out for high highs and low lows, then get something a little bit calmer because this is a very
that's right.
volatile.
Get a job.
Yeah, exactly. Get a job. Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
bit more
Is
predictable.
it, no, you're right. It's not, there's always something coming around the corner,
Yeah.
and it's about that ability to adapt. Because if you can't adapt, but also to stay focused, I think, and stay disciplined, know your numbers.
Yeah, numbers. Yeah, that's one thing we've been learning recently. You just go back to cash flow as well, which is interesting. You might think the cash flow was when we started. And we had cash flow issues as recently as 2 or 3 months ago, Fran, and it's because we had a pattern of ordering and over ordering, and of course, because you're running new numbers, you're actually running a new set of numbers. If you ask sales guys to forecast, they'll always forecast over, not under.
Yeah.
And then when you get stuck with too much stock, then you've got a lot of stock and you have a lot of cash. So cash shortages actually happen in every single business.
Mm.
I'm not, and the other thing is we probably will experience cash shortages again in the future, but And we've actually had, my brother never calls crisis money. He called a crisis money about 6 months ago and said, what's going on? Why is there no money in the bank? And our accountant looked and says, what do you got that much debtors? You got that much stock? Yeah, whatever you actually no problems. You should have any issues, but you just got to, you've over ordered, you ordered when you were starving, never order when you're hungry, or
No, that's
when you're
right.
hungry, just order half as much. You made the fatal mistake, but stock sells stock, and sometimes having stock on the floor is actually a probably good thing. I mean, especially if we've got life as well. So,
Yeah.
a lot of long life stuff as well. And, we're in a situation now with peak period and I don't have as many bills to pay as I would normally pay. So all of that stock that I'm actually selling was actually already paid for. But there's
Yeah.
there's a long return on what we buy. If we buy
Yeah.
something
And
today, it'll return us in 6 months' time.
it's a tough gig though, getting that stock sales ratio correct. And also because it's, I think, more and more, it's not like the old days where you used to get forecasts. And I mean, now I think the retailers particularly are a lot less sort of happy about really forecasting and giving you commitments. So,
Could never tell you. The other thing is you don't know is when someone else is out of stock, which is the biggest reason why you get shocked. You
mm,
know, and this time of year, particularly November, is probably the most significant time when everything which was supposed to come in has been delayed by 2 or 3 weeks. We actually now only manufacture about 18 to 20% of what we sell. So for every $100 that we sell, $20 of that is what we make here in
yeah,
Miranda. The other 80% is what we directly import. And there's various reasons for that. Number one, you can't get it, or number two, it's too expensive. And in food, it's funny because I was talking about Australian origin again on the radio today. But
yeah,
Australians want to buy Australians. No, Australians don't want to buy cheap. Australians want to buy cheap, and in food service, as you know, Brad, it's even worse. It's like, um, there's very little Australian loyalty in food service, and it's not because they're not good people. They're just trying to run a business, and they're trying to
yeah,
look at every single dollar. And in food service, it's a competitive industry, and your food input cost is a big cost because let's
mm,
face it, it's at least 30% of what they put on a plate.
yeah,
And it's the only thing they can really control, both up and down. So yeah, it's interesting that we're very exposed. And being exposed to input means you've got a time lag. You've got this whole cycle of procurement, of buying, and then you add to that season, Fran. So this is in season, this is not in season. It becomes quite a
yeah, yeah,
complex little
yeah.
business. So yeah. But anyway, we're doing our best.
Amazing. So let's go. So we can go off down rabbit holes. I know that, and I
Yes,
know
yes.
I'm pretty sure we can talk all afternoon, which would be fabulous. Let me take you back to when you were 30.
Yep.
Did you feel like you had life figured out, or were you just winging it?
You had no idea. Frame when you're 30, you've got no idea what you're doing. A course many years ago called Landmark, and they
Yeah, yeah,
talk
yeah,
to people that are in their 20s, and I was in my 40s, and they said, "Oh, did you have life like that at 20?" I often say to my kids, I mean, I've got a daughter that's 28, and I look at her and I go, "Yep, you're working twice as hard as I did when I was 28." I was working half as much as you, and in a way, you're so far ahead of what I would have ever at that age. Early, I still had no idea. Wasn't even married. I got married at 31. Sort of had a clue of what I didn't want to do. And that's when I
mm,
started to, when I say find out what you really want, find out what you don't want. I know I didn't. By the age of 30, I'd been working with my father for a couple of years, and I knew that I could make something of this with his belief and with the support of my brother and my mother. I knew that I could take this. I didn't know how far it would go. I knew that we couldn't afford to employ anybody, but I didn't have any clue of how to work it all out. And so this whole learning, my brother and I were fortunate to have tertiary education. So we were very much a pro education. We couldn't afford to get a new car, but you could afford to go to a course and pay $1,000 on learning how to sell, for example. Or it was never any question as to how much money we would spend on doing education. And there was almost like a training allowance, which used to be a thing for people, you have to spend
yeah,
money on
yeah, yeah.
training. So we
I
believed,
love
my
that.
brother and I used to believe in self-education. And if I said to him,
Mm,
I'm going to do a course on this, he'd go, yeah, absolutely. And still to this day, that famous quote about, if you train your people and they leave, well, what if you don't and they stay?
yeah,
I love that. I love that phrase.
yeah,
Are you going to train your people and they leave? Well, train them. I'll stay. What's going to happen then? So I just believe that everybody, and the other thing is, you're fortunate enough to actually employ people that are very smart. We've got some incredibly clever people working for us, much smarter than me. And I think they're part of the real success of the business, but also being part of Family Business Australia. That's one thing that we joined when we were in our 30s. And so learning from other family businesses about how they run their businesses. And
Yeah.
that's a very, very powerful tool, incredibly
Yes.
powerful and incredibly cheap, you know.
Yeah.
When you think about what you get out of family business education, it's very big. So at 30, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea. No idea. No. So
I mean, I think one of the things to really pick out of that is that there was obviously there was a passion for, like, continuing learning, and I think that is such an important thing because when you're humble enough to know the things that you don't know, and actually go and find out how you can do things, that's powerful because that keeps you curious.
the other thing that I did learn from a customer, and I was doing the deliveries and the selling at the same time. He pulled me up and said, "Listen, you've got a product which is probably expandable." Here's a Lebanese guy. He was actually a guy that was very, very smart. Who created most of the food service industry in Sydney, right way now. He created most of the big names in food service in Sydney. And he said to me, "Listen, you're doing deliveries and repping. My advice to you is get someone to deliveries. You've got to hire your weakness," he said. "Hire what you don't, what you can't do, or what you can easily most replaceable talent is delivery. You don't need to deliver. Number one, you're back there. Number two, the time you're spending delivering is time you could be spending in front of a
Yeah,
customer." So he taught me very early on how to do that. And you said you spend your time building relationships with customer. And to this day, one of Sandra's biggest assets is relationship with customer, with vendor, with employee. We only really have three people that we really want to talk to. That's our suppliers, our staff. And in order of importance, Fran, it's number one is staff, number two is
yeah.
supplier, and number three is customer. You might say customer's number one, but I found that if I have a good supplier, that my customer relationships will be. But then again, I've got staff, and staff look after customers. So that's where the customer thing comes in.
Staff are powerful. I mean, the most important, as you said, the most important people that you can train, and I mean, you can't operate without them, and respecting them and creating an environment which they want to work in and want to be with you. They want to be in that ecosystem. It is so powerful because then you can invest in your staff and you know that there's a loyalty.
We've had our staff, some of our staff are 25 years, some of them are 28
Yeah,
years, some of them 15 years. They
I love that.
generally don't tend to leave, Fran, as you'll find a lot of family businesses have this tendency where they become part of the family.
Yeah,
We don't tolerate politics, although there are politics in the family business. When you get to our stage, and we've got branches in Brisbane, Perth, and Victoria, and they run as little businesses, and they come to us and go. And I feel like, head office, I feel like I'm, Coles or Woolworths head office. And we've become, bureaucratic, and this is the way we
yeah,
do. But it's a complicated beast here, and that's they look at things and go, "Well, you guys are, it takes you, it takes you a little while to make a decision on to get things done." I'm saying, "Yeah, because we're a little bit more complicated." So yeah, that's where it's
yeah,
from.
yeah. No,
But anyway, it's
exactly.
good. Yeah, it's interesting.
Look, I mean, that's a wonderful thing that you've got staff there that have been with you for 25 years. We're the same at Paramount. We've got generations that work and, have always come. I mean, that's partially because we're in a rural area,
Right.
but also because where we can, we really do, we work to look after our staff, and advocate for, things like living wage, that kind of stuff. I mean, the UK is different to here, but it's very important to us because, as I say, our staff are the most important ingredient
Yeah,
in
they are.
in everything that we do.
Without our staff, we can't get to where we want to go. We have good staff
No.
and good people to run our businesses, and now we're putting in more of the dashboard, more of the new makes, more of the numbers. You might say we're treating them more like numbers, but everyone's got sort of numbers and targets, and
Yeah.
we've run it more on the sort of the feel good aspect. Now we're getting more into the sharp numbers, and it changes the way you look at the business, and you've got to
Yeah.
be jotting numbers. And I always say, Woolworths and Coles and Aldi, they run their business on numbers, and they've got big businesses, and
Well, they
with the
do.
amount
There's
of
no
systems
emotion.
the systems that are
Yeah.
there now, I think you can run business. My father would say you have to be there all the time, and yes, you do have to be visible, but you don't have to be
Mm.
visible all the time. I mean, I spent a lot of time overseas on buying trips and looking at overseas opportunities important. So yeah, but yeah, it's the balance.
Yeah, no, totally. So going back again to when you were 30, what was your biggest dream at that time? Did life take you where you expected?
biggest dream at 30. I want to be a rock star, Fran, still want to be a rock star. My children tell me at
You're a
61
rock
years old,
star in the food industry, Mimo.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think, the dream was to be and I remember looking at this and saying, I need to be a subject expert in an area which nobody really wants to touch. I looked at the wine industry. I said, if everyone knows anything about wine and who talks about grapes and wine, is anybody talking about olives, olive oil, and, Italian foods? I said, well, I've got Italian background, so I can sort of be like an interpreter or a conduit between what Italians, what they eat. And Italians it's a good food. It's a
Yeah,
very marketable product, and I think I can pretty much translate what Italians do, say, think, eat into more of an Australian sort of context. But I also said I want to be something that nobody is, that I want to be different, and I want to be an expert in an area. And I chose table olives, which is a really bizarre area to sort of specialize in. And, there's people that specialize in sultanas, I'm sure. There's people that specialize in beans, but I decided to specialize in table olives because I thought it was an interesting topic and everyone was honest. And it's still my number one love, and I still actually love table olives. In fact, it's almost like the delight of eating one every time. It's like, this is a very pleasing product. So yeah, I'm still in love with that product that I was in love with at 30 years old. And I
amazing.
really wanted to be that subject expert. And that's the passion. You get the passion for the product and knowing that it's such a perfect product. There's very little, there's just all it's added is salt. That's all, and just add salt to olives and they taste incredibly amazing. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I
So
love it.
that
That was
was,
something I
yeah.
never. We had an amazing olive trees in our back garden
Mm.
here in Victoria, but I spent years, sort of, or not years, I spent months one year when we pulled them all down and salted them all, and they were disgusting. I did it all wrong,
Yeah,
clearly.
no, I would. I've got two olive oil trees in my backyard, and I'll never eat the olives. My wife will take them, and then she'll do what she does. She'll give away to all of the cousins and things. I won't touch them. So, yeah, I mean, you go through these phases. At the moment, I'm in love with what they call a volos, a big round black olive. And it's not even mine. We don't even import it. So it's a product I know. It's imported by a Greek family, and it's these big, juicy black olives that you leave in the fridge. And instead of having a slice of salami or a slice of cheese now, I'll just reach for a couple of dollars and it'll give you that
Yeah.
nice saltiness. It'll it's that perfect snack. And I'm, telling guys, in the gym going, hey, why don't you indicate eating olives instead of salami and cheese or, that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, look, it's that 30 I think I needed to be. And the other thing was food service because in the food industry, everyone was in retail. And I thought, well,
Yeah,
nobody's really doing this area in food service. Nobody's really owning this part of food service. So let's try and own this part of food service because nobody's really giving it any oxygen. Decided to do that, and yeah, we made sure that yeah, made sure that we were that person.
yeah. And it's a great, I mean, it's a great industry, the food service industry. I grew up in it in the UK. And
Mm.
then fortunately, 27 years ago when I came out here, I was able to sort of become involved in the food service industry here. So it's been a wonderful industry and to me, and I'm sure it's been a wonderful industry to you as well,
Yeah, no, yeah.
and continues to be. So looking back now, Mimo, what's something you were completely wrong about at 30?
What was I completely wrong about? Geez, I've been wrong so many times. I was probably wrong about the fact that, I mean, probably you look at the most expensive lessons. I was wrong about the fact that I thought that everybody was going to be, as I suppose, fair income wise,
Yeah,
as straight down the line as I wanted to be. So-called friends that were your customers that ended up, taking your dollars and people that you would help and try and help them with their businesses. And they would invariably buy stuff from you and never pay you. So I was probably and talk about the most expensive lessons, and these are the ones that cost, a lot of money.
yeah,
You lose a lot of money by trusting the wrong people. And I remember the lessons I was getting was like, this guy, you start a distributor or you start someone, they're not paying you, and someone says, go and take them over, and you go, oh, you go, so I'll be good, I'll pay it. And eventually you pay the price of them going out of business and maybe a gap, maybe, oh, mate, I lost everything. So you just don't,
yeah,
you were wrong because you believe that everybody was the same as you. And I always say that to people you look at people through your own lens, through your own eyes.
yeah,
They've got life through their own eyes, and got a little percent. And the other thing is those people that we trusted didn't have a network of brother, father and mother behind them, and they had the ability to, and they probably didn't come from a family background where, my dad was making pickles and, when I was 4 years old, so a lot of
Yeah.
mistakes he made in the 60s and 70s. And that's when I rejoined him in 88.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that a lot of the mistakes I did make, he sort of sat around and watched me make the mistakes. And I would go back and say, "Why did you let me make the mistakes before?" And I'm going to lie, But he would
That's
also,
right.
yeah,
And he
and
was
he would
right.
also encourage me. I'd say, "This is a great idea." He'd go, "Well, no one's stopping you. Go and do it." I said, "It's
Go
going to
and
cost some
try.
money." And he goes, "Yeah, well, we haven't got a lot of money, but you need to get out of Melbourne and go and see Coles. So jump on get a budget, hire a car, make sure it's got no air conditioning, be back by the afternoon so you don't have to pay for a hotel. Get up early in the morning, and see if you can, catch a bus to the airport or something, So, because you can't afford a taxi. But he wasn't against the idea of going to Melbourne. He said, you need to go to Melbourne because Coles is in Melbourne and Coles won't come to Sydney. So you need to go to Melbourne. And
Yeah.
I was lucky
Okay.
because there was other family businesses where the parents would say, no, we can't afford it. So don't go. So, try and sell over the phone. But he knew that the only way to sell to someone like Coles was to get in front of them. And we did, and we're still there. To this day, we're still there.
Yeah. So I mean, the permission to take risks. But I love what you were talking about before, in that, the lessons and the things that you were wrong about, you know, the people that you maybe didn't identify the red flags on,
Yeah.
those kind of things. But do you think that makes you sort of harder going forward? Or do you think you hold on to that value that came from your
Separates
background?
separates the friends from business thing. And there's an old
Yeah.
saying, you don't make friends with your business colleagues. I mean, they're good people. Leave even with your staff. You've got to leave something in the tank. You've got to leave something
Yeah.
behind. You can't be everything. And at the end of the day, your employees or your customers are your friends, but they're not. They're not there for. They're there for their own reasons as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting lesson that there's, and then once again, listening to older, particularly Greek customers, the older Greek, when they said, always leave a distance between you and your customer. Never get too close to any of them.
Yeah.
And my grandmother used to have a saying, too much confidence is not a good thing.
Mm.
In an old Italian dialect. And a lot of these things come from what we call the school of hard knocks, where, don't forget,
Yeah.
we in our great grandparents couldn't read or write, so we
Yeah.
come from we're only a couple of generations from, number one, illiteracy, but number two, success either farming or fishing. My father was a fisherman, and my mother was a farmer. My mother's having the farmers, and dad were fishermen. So we're all fishermen and farmers, really.
Yeah.
And yes, they own their own business tracks.
Yeah.
The concept of being an employee was never in the bloodline.
No. No.
So, and it's just a recent sort of thing, I suppose. But yeah, it's that whole thing about that distance is very good as well. Family's family, and friends are friends, and employees are
Yeah.
employees.
But it's an incredible thing, isn't it? I mean, I've just celebrated my parents' 65th wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't, they have. And, I think it's a tremendous gift that we've been given when we come from a family like that, which, is solid, is stable. Yes, you have your ups and downs, but it's always there. It's a constant. And, going back to, maybe it's one of the things where, we don't see people that I know I've done the same, and it's cost me a lot of money when I've helped people who I thought would be the same as my family, and actually turned out for that not to actually happen, because intrinsically they didn't have the same values as growing up in that really tight family where you just wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, family background, family values, obviously pivotal to what we do.
Mm,
We work with family business advisors, and many years ago they sat down with all four family members and got on some common values on communication, respect, teamwork, and these are all the core values that everybody agreed on. So I
yeah,
had a couple of outliers. Ray probably had a couple. My brother had a couple of outliers, but then we all came together on honesty, respect, teamwork, communication, family has been the five that we always
yeah,
go back to. And you live by them, and sometimes you don't live them, and that's why you can't make them as public, because you're trying to make them. And then because people will see inconsistencies, people say, you talk this maybe you haven't lived it. In this example, I'll say, well, okay, we need to get better
mm.
at that. And that's why you don't really shove them down people's throats,
No.
initially. But it's not saying that it doesn't matter, but it's something we're working towards, that, and
Yeah.
we're getting closer every time. It just
I love that.
probably take us 10 years to get to, a perfectly aligned daily set, where we live, breathe. And I know family businesses that have already got there. In my family business group, there's a couple
Mm,
of them that are
mm.
very, very well aligned with their values, much more than we will probably ever be, but they're more
And
disciplined
it's
than what we are.
important in a family business. It is
Yeah.
important in a family business. Yeah. So, Mimo, they say life is the best teacher, and sometimes those lessons do come wrapped in disaster. So, let's talk about the biggest curveballs that life has thrown at you, whether it was in business, relationships, or personal growth. What's one experience that at the time felt like the worst thing ever, but it actually ended up shaping you?
Look, I mean, everyone's going to get it from the COVID because, you've got a business which is 70% food service, and it just throws a curveball, and, COVID's like everything's gone overnight. But, I don't use COVID because, misery loves company. So everyone got the memo on COVID. Everyone got that. So you want something which is, exclusive to us. So, I
No,
mean,
not
what,
necessarily. I mean, COVID and how everybody coped with that. I mean,
mm,
I'm not sure that many people that are outside of, the general public wouldn't understand exactly what happened when that was announced. That containers were stuck, that, the whole food supply chain suddenly dried
yeah.
up. Restaurants were closed. Um,
Yeah, look, I think what it would be, and is when you have certain staff that you think are going to be there forever, and they just decide one day that and it happens to be. It was actually, I remember, a defining moment. It was, and we used to employ more family members back then. So you have a family member that all of a sudden went, and she had every reason to leave because she had a lot of things happen to her that were just awful.
yeah,
And so that was a real curveball that I thought I've just lost my number one, confidant, personal assistant, and marketing, sales, go-to person, my number one, and she had to go. She had to leave because she lost her husband. He passed away, unfortunately, suddenly.
no,
And she was my first cousin. She's a lovely person. She's incredible.
yeah,
And she had to start a new life. And at the time, I thought, well, but I thought, no, you've got to do this.
yeah,
You've got to start a new life, because if you're
yeah,
here, then this is a remnant of a past life. And so she had to turn a page.
yeah.
Having known that, that was actually probably, but at the time I remember being quite disheartening. I wasn't angry.
Mm,
I suppose a little bit disappointed because I wasn't expecting it to happen.
yeah, yeah. Life changing.
Move on, and some of them will regret it, some of them won't. You know, we lose staff. We lose staff all the time. But some of them go to bigger, better things. Some of them don't. And I always say it's good if they go to bigger, better, they create bigger brands, or they create bigger careers, because it
Mm,
means that they've learned something from us and they could build what they've learned.
yeah,
Some people, well, they stole from me. I was going, well, no, they didn't steal anything. They just, learn. They could learn that from a book or from a seminar or from a podcast.
yeah. So going back to a curveball that, and you've talked about sort of a few things, and obviously things which affected from a business perspective. But if you go back and look at a curveball that maybe hit you personally, that actually you thought at the time, this is awful, but it did actually end up shaping who you are now. Can you
Yes.
think of an experience that actually?
Well, something personally. Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, if you have a situation where someone, theoretically takes some IP off you, or, steals something from
Mm,
you,
mm,
that it does shape you. It sort of makes you a bit more aware. But I just don't. I mean, because I don't believe in holding anything back. You can't hide anything, because I find out anyway. This whole discussion about your turnover and your profit and your margin, your expenses. And I'm sort of going,
yeah.
I don't know why companies hide that from their staff. If they want to find out, they will. And if we're making over excessive profits, which we've done, then I should reward you and help you. But by the same token, if our profits are not great, there's a certain number of return on investment you would get when you put your money into a bank or into a term
Yeah,
deposit, and it's a percentage. And if you can get more than that through a business, then you should. If you get less, then you'll question why and how you move it up, and that's probably a good reason. So I don't think that anyone that's left here with any ideas, it hasn't caused any. I mean, holding a grudge is really not, it's a
No, it's
waste
not.
of energy. It's a waste of time,
Yeah.
Yeah, even though my wife tells me I hold a grudge all the time against that people. But I think I just do that just for fun, just to throw the cat amongst the
Because you
pigeons.
can. So there isn't, is there anything sort of looking back now that you would have said to your 30-year-old self that would kind of, that you could just go back and whisper words of advice back to your 30-year-old self?
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of that time. I spent a lot of that first 10 years second guessing what we thought was right. Everyone will say this. This is time and time again. You trust your gut, trust what you think is right. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. You'll know
Yeah.
inside. The gut feel. I mean, I'm 61 now, so I've got the benefit of hindsight, which is great. You know,
Um,
your feelings about things, and yes, you get them wrong about stuff, about hiring staff. But you'll always hire staff, and they'll come across as being great. They'll interview really well, and you go, okay. Now we start to find the limitations, but you know, what the best advice is actually, that I would tell myself if I was going back, is the classic HR and, hire slowly and fire quickly.
yeah.
It's easy to say it, but once you think about it, if you hire slowly, you'll end up with a bit more due diligence.
Yeah.
And by firing quickly, everybody that gets, that moves an employee on, or, that has to move them on, will say, I don't know why I waited so long to do that, because it was, and the other thing is, if someone's not working, not fair on them either, because you're not actually allowing them to go to their level of,
No.
expertise, and, your skill set might be different than what they are good at. What we struggle with a bit, Fran, is people that come from corporate, and corporates are very much, everything's done for them, and they've got structure and systems and procedures, and we just don't have that. Getting there, we're getting more and more and more
Yeah.
of the system type things, but we're not nearly at the level that a major food company would be at. But at this stage, it's becoming there. But yeah, that whole trust your or trust your gut, which is a big thing. So I think that's what I would say to 30-year-old myself. I would say, listen, a lot of stuff that you've got in your ideas are probably fundamentally correct.
Yeah.
But you're a bit sort of, timid in how you approach it. You should go for it. And you can be, I remember at 30, I was scared of so many competitors, and don't want, reincarnate to this market because there's all this. Now I don't tear anybody really. I just think, we're
Mm,
going to go for it, we're going to go for it. And, someone says, why can't you sell X? The customer is the customer. They're a food service customer. They will buy X from us. They also buy Y from somebody else. I can ask them to buy Y from me if I can
mm,
prove that I'm a worthy supplier of this Y product.
yeah.
And that depends on my ability to solve X well, and to have them trust me and use me as a supplier. But yeah,
Fundamental, isn't it?
yeah,
Trust.
just we'll trust. We'll trust.
Yeah.
With employees, with suppliers, customers, it's all trust.
Yeah. And so normally I would ask now, sort of, if you could give your 30-year-old self just three pieces of advice, what would they be? We've kind of covered some of those, I think, but I think it's a good thing to actually go back and really articulate
Okay,
those.
so number one would be persistence. I think persistence is the only thing that is really going to cut through. And I mean, I set myself some tasks of being persistent. Just not in Sandhurst, but in the rock and roll world, where I'm trying to get work for this bank called West Memphis, and I've become a salesperson again. And I'm realizing that as a salesperson, there is only persistence. And if you're
Yeah.
not succeeding, then it's because you've got no persistence. So the persistence is number one, first and foremost. That would be fundamental. Number two is probably education and learning. So much more now these days. There's so much learning, mutual, podcasts. You can learn so much. Back in our day, you had to buy tapes, and you had to
Yeah.
listen to tapes in the car, and so the learning, the education piece. Probably the other one is the liaison with family businesses. The only people that can teach you how to run a family business, in my opinion, is another family business who has done it like you. FBA, Family Business Australia, is a network of people that have the same thing in common. We really want each other to succeed. I went to one of their half-day seminars 2 weeks ago, and you hear stories of companies like Cooper's Brewery, of Berenberg and Bundaberg, and people like that, people in our industry, and also people in other industries as well, and like a brotherhood of family businesses. And it's unlike anything else that we really Of course we've got enemies. Their enemies are the big corporates, So
Yeah.
we love to have a crack at those guys. And unfortunately, they're our customers too. And sometimes,
Yeah.
I'm very outspoken on LinkedIn as well when I, have a crack at those guys, the faceless people and the faceless companies. And yes, they are my customers. So I'm probably finding it ad turning sometimes. But I do believe that people, in this industry, that family businesses are far, far more effective and far more just a better organisations than corporates, only because of the fact that we can make decisions quickly
Yeah.
and we have the ability to talk to our staff one-on-one. And what do my staff members say? The train driver is in front of you. So you want to train, and as long as I tell them where the train's going, and they're like, hey, and they need to tell them, and that's nothing I need to tell them where the train's going, but they can also tap me on the shoulder at any time, not that they do, because I think they're probably a bit scared intimidated, whatever. But that's my fault because I need to make myself more accessible to them
Uh-huh.
and encourage them to say, listen, this is, are you, and of course, the biggest question is, Fran, as you know,
Mm.
is when are you going to sell? Or when you sell or when you're going to sell? And the
Yeah.
biggest message you can send to them about selling the business is instilling next generation. So I have my nephew. We have our nephew working for us. So my brother's son is working for us now, and he's part of the business. He's actually working with right off in the warehouse because he's the acting warehouse manager at the moment. We get to come to lunch now, which is really good because it means he's actually got bigger
That's
things to
it.
do.
And his spurs.
Yeah,
I did the
so
same. We all
he's
did the same.
so he's actually doing higher duty at the moment. He's acting warehouse manager, and I said, well, that's good. So we've got fantastic warehouse manager. Her name is Joanne, and she's incredible.
Mm.
And Daniel's getting appreciated for how hard she absolutely works.
Yes, exactly. Well, and it's good. It's good for the next generation to understand that, it's taken a lot of effort, a lot of persistence, a lot of grit to actually make sure that, this business is there for them to come into.
That's right. I said that today to Daniel. I said, your cousins are part of the greater forum group. They don't have to be involved in the business, but they can be like a board of directors. He said, no, if to hire someone who used to work for
Mm.
Westpac on my board, that's one thing, but they've got the same status because they have a say. And if they believe that, their say must be heard and we must hear them out and we can't shut them down and we say, okay, you guys are potentially 25% shareholders of the business. Because if my brother and I, we get hit by a
Yeah,
bus tomorrow, then you guys, there's only 4
you
grandchildren.
guys,
So
you're
that's
it.
it.
Yeah,
That's it. So at the moment, there's only 3 of us. It's my brother, myself, and my parents. My parents have, half, and my brother each have a quarter. But, of course, my parents are always imply that whatever their shares are going to that guy. So it's 50-50.
yeah,
And my brother and I run at 50-50 anyway. So we expect that
yeah.
online. So, yeah.
I love that. But I mean, giving the kids the fundamentals
Yeah.
and, taking them. My father was amazing at that because he was actually a graduate trainee with British Oxygen,
There you
worked
go.
on nitrogen freezing, and going back to sort of how we ended up in the seafood industry was because he was actually in the nitrogen division of British Oxygen, and he was a scientist who ended up in marketing. But he was putting the nitrogen freezers into young seafoods over in Ireland. Prawns and things like that were all frozen in big blocks in the olden days,
That's right.
in the 70s. And he was refining the process of individually quick freezing.
IQF, which is
Yeah,
a,
of IQF. So, and while he was doing that for youngs, an opportunity came into the factory he was working in where they were cutting queen scallops and sending product to America. And Youngs didn't want to have anything to do with it. So he, being a marketing man and a true entrepreneur, which is quite a rare thing for a scientist, he actually went about then setting up Neptune. And that's how it evolved. But through his graduate days with BOC, they put him through all different parts of the business. So it was part that he had to do. And he did that with us girls because we're 4 girls. So we were sent to Ashridge Business School just outside London. And we did 3 weeks courses, which even back then cost like £20,000.
sorry, what about
Yeah, because he wanted us to not be insular from a family business perspective.
yeah,
So he
yes.
wanted to make sure I did a finance for non-financial managers where I learnt to build a balance sheet and a P&L. I did a marketing course there and I did a purchasing course. So those were like really in depth. I can remember, I think I mentioned this before on the podcast, but I can remember when you sit in the circle at the beginning of this 3-week course and you have to say who you are. the chap that sat next to me stood up and he said, I can't remember his name now, but I could definitely remember his title. He said, I'm the general manager of Dulux Northern Hemisphere. And it was like, oh my God, I'm like 23 and I work for my dad.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, you're IGB in Daddy's business. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I just understand how powerful that is because we saw all parts of the business and we're able to still to this day able to look at the numbers and really know understand that from a business perspective. Important
Sorry. Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
that's very
So
good.
so so Mimo, do you think that younger professionals and entrepreneurs now struggle with the same things we did? Or do you think they're facing a completely different world?
No, I think it's. I think there's no difference, Fran. I think there's challenges the same. It's more complex in our eyes, but in their eyes, it's probably a lot of stuff is done easier. I mean, didn't have AI, we didn't have other technology tools.
Mm,
I just think the fundamentals are there. I just think they're probably thinking that they can probably do things a bit easier and not understanding that the hard stuff has to be done.
yeah.
You talk about, I mean, obviously online and meeting, Zoom meetings, nothing beats a face to face. You can achieve so much more with a face to face than you can with a phone call and things like that. But
Yeah.
and then, the phone's one of those things that, we used to use religiously. They pick up a phone. You can text people. Why don't you just ring them up and talk to them? Huh?
Yeah. I agree with
My
you on
mum
that.
guilt says, well, I don't do nearly as much, bringing on the phone and going, how you going? So, I just think that it's there. They've just probably got more choices as to how to engage with people. But I think the creativity side is something that, and I just find there's a bit of a, dare I say, dumbing down of what we do. And
Mm,
I find the young generation, I didn't add this. When we were young, there's a whole thing for whole, young people, the struggle is if ever it is failure to launch, like young people that don't understand or, they're in their 20s and they haven't, they're not getting out of bed in the morning. They're not, getting to work, or they're, still working out what they're doing. My God, when I got out of uni, I basically had to get straight to work until I couldn't. My parents chill me,
yeah.
and
I'm
even
with
when
you on that.
when I joined
Yeah.
my father's business, he would say, well, you don't have to show up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but you have to be on the road by at least 8 o'clock, 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate. Both my daughters are very hardworking.
Yeah.
They're both pretty hardworking
Pretty
kids.
driven. Yeah.
They've grown up in a hard work
Yeah.
a work ethic environment.
Yeah.
But then they also enjoy the good things in life. I understand by enjoying good food and good holidays and
Yeah.
vacation, then that has to be paid for, and we're very lucky.
No, no, no.
But I think young people have got a lot of choices, but I just think probably the hardest thing is the fact that maybe the parents are not sort of maybe allowing them to do what they should be doing. I've got no idea why there's so much disparity at all. I see it more in boys than in girls. No, I only have two girls. I just wish I knew what it was, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing. But I think the challenges are the same thing. But it was hard for us, and it's hard for them. It's never been easy to start a business. Uh, but as I said, what I do know is my daughter definitely works harder at 28 than I did at 28. And she's a lawyer. She's a
Yeah.
HR lawyer working for a very large law firm in the cities. And I see the hours she put in, and I sort of go, wow, I hope you're really enjoying this because you're putting a lot of your life in there, doing a lot
Yeah.
of hours for it, That's what she does. But, they enjoy themselves. They go to great restaurants. They just come back from Korea on holidays. So they just,
Yeah.
they're living the
That's
life.
the
Her and
main
her
thing,
sister
isn't
living
it?
life. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, they're
Dad
living life.
begrudged them one thing, I said, mate, go and enjoy yourself, It's good.
You need to do that. That's a good life lesson.
Yeah,
I
it
think if
is.
you're
Yeah.
doing things
Yeah.
that you don't enjoy, it's really important to reflect and really look at,
Yeah.
why you're here
Yeah.
and what the purpose of life is. You know, I mean, back to something that you said earlier about, sort of when you were 30, you knew exactly what you didn't want.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people stay in that space. They're very good at knowing what they don't want.
What came through in a lot of these podcasts that I listen to, a lot of people move on purely on money, and you've got a great job, and I mean, we don't pay huge amounts of money. People that work with us, oh, it's a great job, but I can get so much more elsewhere. I said, if you're only here for the money alone, then you're probably not the right place. If you
Yeah,
think, because I'm sure you will get much more money somewhere else, you've got to really enjoy what you do, and you've got to be able to be motivated by the fact you can do something, you achieve something, make some mistakes, not pay for your mistakes. That's probably what I'm not paying the wages or paying for your mistakes. Yeah, at the same token, you got to be motivated by by doing a job and being part of the family.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you're really looking for that extra dollar that going to be life changing, I had that happen to me where some guy came and says, "I've been offered a job, and it's it's a huge amount of money extra." And I said, "Well, obviously that's important to you, so you better go." He says, "But I don't want to leave. This is the best job I've ever had." I said, "Well, if it was the best job you've ever had, then you wouldn't go looking elsewhere."
You wouldn't be looking.
And to this day, I still talk to that guy. He says, "Oh, I wish you could come back." Sorry, you can't, because we generally don't take people back. But yeah,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, people make decisions, and that's what happens. So being
That's
motivated,
right.
purely by money, Claire, I think sometimes it's, and that's the other thing. I'm not motivated by money. I don't do this.
Yeah.
I look at money because it's something I can't pay it. I make a profit, but by
Yeah,
the
of
same
course.
token, I've never done it because I want to. I didn't say I want to make X amount of dollars. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, and I genuinely enjoy coming to work. I mean, people says, "Now, why is your father here every day? He's 94. He's here because he belongs here, and he loves it. He loves to watch. He loves to walk around and see the stock, and have a look and hear about the trials and tribulations, and have a whinge as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You got
I
to be able to
love
have a
that.
complaint.
That's beautiful though, that he does still come in.
He
That's
does, yeah.
fantastic.
I'm very fortunate.
And that mum watches the numbers. I
Yeah,
love
mum's
that.
she's at home, and she's got people coming around every day to help her, relatives,
Yeah.
family, and sure, when they're gone, she'll jump on the iPad and say, "Okay, what were the turnover figures today, and who hasn't paid us some money, and who's going broke, and why hasn't this person paid?" And so yeah, she'll see all the social, Facebook and
Yeah,
Instagram,
yeah.
she'll
I
comment, "Oh,
love it.
that's a good Instagram post. That doesn't
That's
look good. Why do
cool.
we do this? Who's this person on Instagram?" So it's good. It keeps them active, but so yeah.
I love it. It keeps them
Extremely
involved,
fortunate.
it keeps them connected. Okay, Memo, we've covered the deep stuff. Now let's have some fun. I'm gonna hit you with some quick fire questions. So
Yep.
to come up with what's the worst business or life advice you ever got?
What's someone give me something that I just I thought about this. I just can't think of anything. If someone gives you bad advice, I just block it out. I suppose I suppose someone says, "Oh, you've got to be in this, you've got to be doing this market, or you've got to be selling this, or you've got to have." Yeah, okay. There you go. The first word, someone says, "Oh, a guy like you should be driving around in this car," sort of thing. And that was one of my competitors. "Oh, how come you driving?" I was just driving a van. How come you driving a van? You should be driving a Mercedes
I get my
Benz.
olives in the back. That's
Yeah,
what I
exactly.
drive a
So that's what
van.
I did. I said, "I got stuck in the back. I'll get delivered this afternoon. Would you like to help me?" So the worst advice I had was from a person who said he used to judge me on the car I drove. He said, "The guy like you that owns this company, you shouldn't be driving a Toyota Hiace. You should be driving a Mercedes, S class or something." And I said, "That's great advice. Thank you very much. I'll take that with a grain of salt."
Put that on the shelf.
And then funnily enough, he was a rep, and I showed up to a customer and I said, "Look, you showed up in a Mercedes."
I love that.
There you go, not so much. In the customer's eyes, the customer loved that, by the way, and that was good.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
bet
that
they
was good.
did. You're cheeky enough to get away with
Yeah,
that.
well, I did. I just stir
Exactly.
them up all the time. Yeah, anyway, go on. Yeah,
So if you could have lunch with any historical figure, who would it be?
he's a historical figure. Okay, alive or dead, historical figure. No, you know what?
Whoever.
There are people that I think. Well, yeah, I did think about this one. It's probably the guy that created Ferrero, which is Mr. Nutella of the Ferrero family. Mr. Ferrero, the original Ferrero, he was the guy that had the vision to create probably the greatest food company in the world, is Ferrero, with Nutella and Kinder Surprise and Tic Tac, and now they own Kellogg's as well. So they're just a powerhouse. Of course, they're Italian.
Yeah. Of course.
And so, of course, very proud Italians. And so he was the guy that had the vision to create a product that nobody else had, because things had this, hazelnut paste, and chocolate was expensive. So it created this hazelnut thing called Nutella. And when they opened up a factory in Lithgow in 1971 in Australia, and said, "You are mad. No one will buy this chocolatey hazelnut. There's a nothing product here." And the rest is history. So Mr. Ferrero is my hero, and probably the greatest food marketer that I would ever encounter. He is.
I love that.
And we were fortunate to have a brand called Mutti, and Mutti is very much in that Ferrero vein as well. It's a very visionary product. It's one of the iconic brands, like Barilla, San Pellegrino, Lavazza.
Yeah.
These are the iconic brands. really
All
coffee.
Italian, by the way.
So, yeah, we're all Italian. I just think, the great food brands. Are there any other? My daughter works for Nestle, so I've got to say Nestle's a great food brand
Yeah,
as well. But, they're Swiss, so it's not bad. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So, yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah.
So, what's a guilty pleasure you refuse to apologize for? Is it Nutella?
No, I'm not a sweet person. Pleasure is food. I just always get excited. I'm
Yeah,
constantly
exactly.
looking at food, and it just makes you more obsessed with it.
Um,
It's like working in the candy shop. But they say, if you work in chocolate, you'll never eat chocolate, and it's true. I don't eat a lot of the products which we manufacture because I
yeah,
just find them just too overwhelming about olive. But yeah, look, I just think the guilty pleasure is the fact that, when you find something good, you intend to, it's a guilty pleasure. And yeah, you don't apologize for it because, and when you go to Italy, I've got the best job at the world. So I go and visit suppliers, Fran, and those suppliers know all the best places to do it.
yeah, exactly.
So if you make tomatoes, if you make,
Yeah,
prosciutto, if you make,
yeah,
truffles, then you will go to the finest truffle places in the
yeah.
world. And most people will never even
Mm,
go near these places. So yeah,
my
well,
mouth is my
yes,
mouth is watering.
yes, exactly. So that's what we
So it's
live
just
in.
food in general, then.
Yeah, you know what, I've always dreamed. As a kid, I always dreamed of I used to have a look at a packet of Cocoa Pops and go, what an amazing product this is. I would love to sell Cocoa Pops for a living. So I've always dreamed of, and actually when I got out of uni, I went to all these food companies and I said, I want a job. They said, no, you can't get a job because your marks are terrible. So I actually went outside. I actually went for other companies, and it was good because I learned B2B,
Yeah,
which is actually
yeah,
food service. So that was a great lesson. So, not getting what you want is actually a good thing. So,
absolutely.
because consumer marketing is very, very different to food service marketing.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, Mimo, if your 30-year-old self had a theme song, what would it be? And can you play it?
Well, yeah, I could probably sing it. While you see a chance, take it. That's what you do. You got to grab things. You got to take the chance. I mean, was it Bon Jovi? Great rock and roll. He said, "I don't want my life to be shoulda, coulda, woulda. Your life has got to be I tried it. I could have been this. I could have done that." That's, you're 26, so in your case 30, but 26, I'm sitting in my chair at Philips Electronics and, I've got my job as an assistant product manager. My father says, come and join me for a year. Oh, I should have done that. I could have done that. And you don't want to die wondering. You say, if I did it and it didn't work, then it didn't work. I had to go. But you don't want to say, oh, I could have, should have. And because you'll get to 50 and go, I could have been, and that's what I said to my kids. I said, listen, you're not in the business at the moment. You don't want to live it too long because then you'll have a coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah, got to make a decision.
Yeah, it's a
Got to make a
decision.
decision. So, what was your song, Bon Jovi?
No, Bon Jovi's the artist, but there's a song called Stevie Winwood is "While You See a Chance to Take It."
Stevie Winwood.
Stevie,
Oh my, love Stevie Winwood. Yeah, I went to u I love that one. I went to university in Cheltenham, and Stevie Winwood was from Cheltenham, so he
so there you
used
go.
to yeah, so he used to come into our student union at times, and because he recorded in a place called, I think it was the Backyard Studio or so Back Lane Studio. Anyway, that Stevie Winwood, yes, "Take a Chance, You Take It." I
Yeah,
love
you
that.
see a chance to take it, and find romance, all that sort of stuff. It's great. I love it.
That's
Yeah,
it.
it's just
Brilliant.
that just came into my mind. My
Yeah,
head's full of songs. Obviously, I'm a musician, so
yeah.
I have songs all goes to my brain all the time. So yeah. So
So what kind of
music.
venues do you play?
We're playing tomorrow night at the local Prince Hotel in Kirrawee, which is a local Feros pub. So, we're just getting together. The band's called West Memphis. It's country rock.
Amazing.
I get the chance to sing most of the songs, which is great. It's great at 61 to still be able to sing and play bass and perform. And, we did a gig last. We've actually booked every weekend until the end of the year. Quite a few for next year. So we're getting lots of bookings. But
Fantastic.
I'm still not happy that I'm getting the quality of the gigs that I want. But I'm happily, pushing out there and dealing with the band members and, convincing them they
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
work
yeah,
for peanuts because they're getting peanuts. And if I can make them enjoy doing it, see, it's just like Santa. If I make you enjoy what you're doing,
yeah,
you'll forget about the money because I know you'll
absolutely.
be able to get double playing for someone else and
That's
they will
it.
pay you double. But I want to make sure you have a great time and you enjoy yourself on stage. And so you'll get that buzz of enjoying yourself on stage. And when it doesn't become enjoyable on stage, go and find another band to work with, but I've got to
Yeah,
make,
no, I love that.
as the leader of West Memphis of that band, I'm running it like Sandhurst, and I'm going to make sure that our people are as comfortable as possible and enjoy
Yeah,
themselves. And that's my job.
I love it. Well, here's the thing. In Austin, Texas, where I go, my daughter's partner is a singer-songwriter, Brady Johnson, and he country. But when they play in all these different venues, and Austin, Texas is phenomenal for all these different venues.
That's good.
It's just a candy shop for musicians. But when they play, quite often they actually just have a big goldfish bowl on the front of the stage and everybody tips the band.
Yeah, they call it the tip jar.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily get paid for actually being in the venue.
It's a big
It's
thing in
actually done whether people enjoy you or not.
because I'm part of the community, the international community, cover band community. Yeah, they always talk about tip jar in Australia. We just don't know about the tip jars.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. So beautiful. So my last question on my quick fire questions, which none of our questions have been quick fire because we both talk, but what's one thing you absolutely sucked at 30, but you reckon you may have mastered it now?
I think probably the numbers. I've never been a numbers person. I've never been a person that looks analytically at numbers, and I think numbers used to scare me. And I used to see numbers and go, oh,
I don't understand that.
yeah, accountant. I married an accountant. They
Yeah,
say you hire your witness, so I hired a witness. I married one, and she's the polar opposite of me. Grace is my total opposite. She's an accountant, rational. She's logical, and and I'm just crazy, and just out there with the fairies, and got a different sense of
does she
humor.
play bass, Mimo? Does
No,
she
she doesn't.
play
She
bass?
doesn't do anything that doesn't have anything to do with music, which is probably good because then we'd probably want to kill each other,
Yeah.
more than we normally do. But anyway, no, but we're complete opposites. But we both love family. We both love our family and our food and our girls. We've got a very strong bond, and she's an accountant, so and she lives in the world of accounting
Yeah.
every day. And I see when I'm married when I was 31, so back then I used to see the numbers. But now I'm more into the numbers than I probably
Yeah.
was. Read the balance sheets, and I'm not that savvy on it, but I know where to go to, and I could probably do a lot more training in that area. But I think I can master that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really didn't understand anything about finance when I was in my 30s. And I
Mm,
probably understand it a little bit more, but not nowhere near what someone
yeah.
that's very financially savvy.
Super important when you're running a business. So
Absolutely, it is the business.
yeah, exactly. It really is. Wow. Mimo, that was incredible. I know so many listeners are going to resonate with
Thank you.
with your story. Before we wrap up, let's just do a quick recap. What's the single biggest takeaway you'd like our audience, to take away from our conversation today?
The biggest takeaway is that you've got people around you. People will generally want to help you. Um, Nobody in any that owns a business would ever deny anybody else some sage advice.
Mm,
A lot of people hire consultants, and of course, they borrow you much tea at a time. But a lot of consultancy is free. You just got to approach it the right way. I mean, as a business owner, you can talk to someone else, and they'll give you I mean, I went out with a competitor this week. He's a
yeah.
competitor, direct competitor, and I gave him advice on how he should run an in-state bank. And so there's a lot of free stuff out there. I just think we need to talk to people. We just put stuff in front of people in every aspect. It's sales, that's relationships, that's banking, that's customer suppliers, everything. So I think being
Yeah.
visible is a big
I
thing. And
agree.
once you are visible, then you are engaging, and you could ask people to help you. And I think people are generally good. I don't think that people are. There's a few bad eggs out there, but I think people are generally,
Mm,
once you ask for help, they will actually.
yeah. It's the power of those relationships and connections, isn't it?
Yeah, and if
So
they know,
powerful in
and the
business.
thing
You
is,
need it.
I mean, I get a lot of people selling me stuff all the time, Fran, and I
Mm,
just really get annoyed with the fact they're trying to sell me something they got no idea about who I am. Not that I'm
what you're
important, but
doing.
what my key
Yeah.
frustrations are. Like I want to sell you something that computer software. I don't do software. I've got a finance team that works in software. I don't know anything about software. Don't talk to me about software. Oh, but you're the owner. I said, yeah, I might be the owner, but I don't decide who buys the toilet paper. You might as well ask me who buys the toilet paper. I don't care as long as there's toilet paper.
Yeah.
So, I put it up there with toilet paper.
Talk to me
It's
about
like,
olives.
well, let's
I'm
talk about olives.
concerned.
I'll get involved in the olive buying for sure because that's emotional. that's passionate for me. That's what that you,
Absolutely.
so if you ring me up, want to sell me islands, I'll talk to you. Absolutely. You look at my language now, but don't talk about stuff that I don't,
Yeah. Well, we've made that clear. So I love that. And for everyone listening, here's my challenge to you. Take one thing from today's episode and apply it to your life this week. Maybe it's reaching out to someone who can mentor you. Maybe it's finally taking that leap you've been scared of. Whatever it is, take action. And if this episode inspired you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a question or a topic you want me to cover in a future episode, please send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in to What I Wish I Knew at 30. And remember, your best chapters are still ahead. So it's goodbye from me and from my guest, Mimo Librano.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fran. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mimo.
Okay.
Okay, we're done.
We're done. Well done. Thank you.